I'm also going to have us go live on USA Beach Handball. Just two birds with one stone, right? All right, it's loading up. Okay, we are now streaming live to Facebook. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
I just got a notification. Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, we will get started then. We will just get right into it. So welcome everyone to the 9th edition of our Facebook Live series sponsored by Verizon. These have been really fun to do throughout the pandemic, so we're just going to keep rolling with them. And today I'm really happy to be joined by 3 members of the Women's Beach Program. So we have Lisa Dunn, Mishi Mensing, and Cedar Bellows on today's call. I'm going to do a quick rundown of who each person is, and then I will let them do a more in-depth introduction. So first up, we have Lisa Dunn, who is the head coach of the women's beach team. She's also the current head coach of Atlanta Beach Handball. So Lisa's based out of Atlanta, Georgia. She previously served as assistant coach for the women's beach program, helping them at the 2019 World Beach Games in Doha. Lisa was previously a national team athlete, actually on the indoor side of things. She made the transition from athlete to coach after the 2018 IHF Beach World Championships in Russia, but she previously did compete for Team USA at a number of international competitions and was training with the National Team Residency Program in Auburn, Alabama. So Lisa, thank you so much for being on the call today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Next up, we have Mishi Mensing, who is the women's assistant coach of the USA Beach Handball program. She was also the assistant coach during the World Championships in Kazan and is a current board member for the San Francisco CalHeat Team Handball Club. She's also very instrumental in the youth programs in the Bay Area and is one of the founders of the US Beach Handball Tour, which is a program designed to promote beach handball as well as recruit athletes for their national team player pool. So Mishi is based out of San Francisco. Thank you for being on with us today, Mishi.
Thank you, Melissa. Excited to be here.
Excellent. And then finally, we have Cedar Bellows, who I believe is in Colorado.
Yep, that's right.
Perfect. So Cedar was a multi-sport athlete participating in everything from basketball, baseball, softball, track and fields, to even rodeo and fitness competitions, which is super interesting. She was in college as a volleyball player and middle blocker, and then later discovered beach handball, with 2019 being her first season training and competing with the women's program. She earned 13 caps with the US national team and most recently competed in the inaugural World Beach Games. And Cedar is also the women's beach representative to the USA Team Handball Athletes Advisory Council. So a very impressive group of people on the call today. Like I said, I'm going to step back now and let each of you introduce yourselves. So yeah, Lisa, if we can just kick it back to you, I'd love to hear about your intro to the sport, what made you decide to get into coaching, and where you are now with it.
Sure. You did such a good job summarizing. I wrote like notes and you pretty much covered all of it. So awesome job. So you already said a majority of it. So I was a national team player for both the indoor and the beach team, and was able to compete internationally with both teams. And my introduction to the sport was actually in Germany, where I grew up. And there they used the sport when I was young to kind of bridge the gap over the summer of the 2 seasons. And it was always a lot of fun. It was a lot more laid back than what we see now in high level competitions. But Maryland called us up and said, hey, come down to Myrtle Beach. We're trying to get something going here. We have a pretty cool tournament coming up. And so all of us in Auburn went and competed. And that's what kind of got everything started for us here in the US. And yeah, it's been on and off, I think, for the past year up until 2018. Got another call from Maryland and she said, come try out for the team. And Mishi was the assistant coach. Coach Giuliano was the head coach. And I flew out to LA and tried out and was fortunate enough to be selected. And I think there was a real pivotal moment for me because I just identified that there wasn't a lot of female representation in coaching and as a whole from beach handball. We were really fortunate to have Mishi on our staff, but outside of that, there's maybe a few teams that had female representation. And it was really eye-opening then as I looked back in my indoor career, and it was kind of the same deal. So I made the transition from then on to now to turn into coaching, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's excellent. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. We could always use more women coaches in the sport and just in sport in general. So fantastic. Mishi, I'd love for you to go next if that's all right with you.
Sure. Always hard to follow up. Great introduction. I think, Melissa, thank you. So I am originally from Germany. So I actually grew up seeing the sport of handball. I'm a third generation handball player, so it goes back all the way to my grandparents already. So you can tell it's just a lot more spread and known, the sport. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in Berlin, where we actually had quite a lot of big beach handball tournaments. So my earliest memories date back to me playing in the sand next to my mom playing the sport. So I wasn't I was maybe able to catch the ball at that point, but wasn't actually playing. But as Lisa also mentioned, like the entire atmosphere at a beach handball tournament, especially in Europe with a lot of fun tournaments, was very laid back, a lot of music. You were at the beach, and the teams have incredibly funny names. And I think that was one of the things that drew me into the sport first. It was like the champion at the time was named the Flying Kangaroos. I'm like, this is such a crazy or fun name for a sports team. This must be a cool sport. And so I was fortunate to actually play it, just like Lisa, in the summer off season, usually in my youth. Then Germany dropped a bit off the beach handball map, so also the tournaments got more sparse. And then I actually moved 6 years ago to the US and saw a random Facebook post by Maryland. So all somehow circles back to Maryland, who's been a great advocate for the sport. Posting about a developmental camp in Miami, and I was like, Miami beach handball, that must be amazing. So I texted her, I reached out to her, and I'm like, hey, can foreigners participate? Maybe because it was an official USA camp, and she was so happy just to have more people. And I think that also this openness to including more people, to have more people experience the sport and learn from one another, is one of the most beautiful things about our community also today, where we really try to just learn wherever we can, since the sport is so young and we are also young with the sport. There's not a lot of coaching education, there's not a lot of education for players out there, so we're just grasping and sending each other links left and right to just stay informed and get deeper into the sport and make it our own.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Mishi. I think that's really exciting to hear about how young everything is and how much potential there really is for the future. Cedar, I know your introduction to beach handball looked a bit different from Lisa's and Mishi's in terms of just discovering it, not as a kid growing up. So I would love to hear about, your introduction to beach handball and what that looked like.
Yeah, I really envy these two getting to grow up with the sport and having that background, but mine is a lot more brief. I just came to know the sport at the beginning of the 2019 season, had no idea it existed up until then. I stumbled upon it by accident. Hannah Ross in the players pool, we worked together for a brief bit, and she asked if I wanted to come out and try a practice out in LA. And she knew that I had somewhat of a background playing beach volleyball at that time, so thought that I might transition okay. I had been missing being part of a team and having a competitive outlet since I had graduated from Regis in 2016. So a few years later, was really thankful to have an opportunity to jump back in and do something along those lines. So she put me in touch with Giuliano, coach at the time, and she welcomed me out to a practice. And as cliche as it sounds, kind of fell in love with the sport right away. Loved being on the sand, loved the girls. I remember just a few weekends into training, we were doing some kind of scrimmage drill, and there's a break in play, and I was just kind of looking around thinking, man, I get to play with my friends, a super fun game on the beach, and have the shot at representing the USA and doing that. Like this is pretty awesome. I think I kind of struck gold here. So that's my brief introduction into the sport. And we got to play Norca, got to play the World Beach Games that season. I felt and feel very lucky to have been a part of that with not having much of a background into the sport leading up to that point. So yeah, that's where I've started.
Excellent. Thank you, Cedar. Really interesting in terms of just sort of being fortuitous with Hannah being your coworker at the time and then finding it that way. I would love to talk a bit more just about the program in general, maybe just some interesting tidbits about USA Beach Handball and what things look like. If you were to, sell a stranger who didn't know what USA Beach Handball was, what sort of things would you tell them about the program?
Yeah, I can tap in on that one. So pretty much anybody that you try to explain beach handball to have no idea that it's a sport. So you have to get creative about painting the picture and what that looks like. The common go-to for me is it kind of looks like water polo on land, on the sand. And that kind of gives you somewhat of a mental picture of generally what the game looks like. But when you say handball, a lot of Americans' mind goes to, is that the sport that you hit with your hand against the wall? But yeah, it's really unfamiliar to most here in the US for now, but giving them the idea of what it looks like and that there's actually competitive play and that you get to travel internationally and that there's a huge opportunity in getting to extend your sports career even past college really piques the interest of some and is a good recruiting point.
Yeah, I would also add that because I deal with a lot of indoor athletes because I play also on the indoor circuits in the US, right? And there's also this barrier of entry. I was like, oh, but it's sand. I can't dribble. I can't, like, how do I move? But it's a super fun game. You're always in numerical superiority when you're playing. So there's always someone open to take a shot. And that I think is the most fun aspect of it. You always get to shoot. Like there's not this lockdown situation that, okay, this team is much better than we are. We would never be able to score. The success moment of you being able to score and anyone on the team being able to score, not only the top players, is I think something that's always underestimated, but it's such a tool also to get more people into sports and just do it as a fun summer activity. It doesn't have to be even on the beach. I play with the same rule set on grass during the summer because we don't have a lot of beaches here in San Francisco. And I have regulars that just come out for our summer season and play with us on the beach, on the grass, and they don't even come to indoor anymore. or never did, but they're waiting patiently for summer to come around and just play this game because they love this act of I score a goal, which you don't have in every sport. Like the ability to score a goal yourself. When you think of other sports like soccer, there's so few goals that actually end up being scored, that this little success moment, I think, is something for everyone who likes to be competitive and likes to have the success moment.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, there's also still room for creativity. The sport is still so new that a lot of elements from American sports tend to be pretty successful, like the alley-oop from basketball, and if you're a good shooter from softball or any other throwing sport, really, you're going to see some success. And it's interesting because when you have new players come out in indoor, I remember just awkwardness, you just get hit, and it's can be very demoralizing. And in beach, a lot of the times awkwardness really works, and it kind of takes people off guard, and then they're like, oh, was that okay? And you're just like, I think so. It was fine. And so you get to be creative in the sand within the sport too, and kind of develop your own style. And it's really exciting to see new players come out and then just kind of leaving it and seeing what happens. And then you kind of go a little bit into the rules, but it's a lot of fun to see different styles come out, and you can see it in an international tournament. There's so many different styles that on any given setup or opponent can be successful. And I think that that's a really great selling point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I find that really interesting just to hear about the different styles amongst different countries and different teams. So just as a quick follow-up to that, what are some of the different styles, if you could describe them, and what would you classify the American style as?
The American style is still developing. So I think we're really trying to figure out what will stick. And I think it changes with personnel, but you see a team that always gets brought up in beach is Brazil. They're very alley-oop heavy, so a big, powerful team that has jumping capabilities. And then you have a team like Denmark that's a bit more traditional. They usually play 4 out, a lot of passes, a lot more 360, because they don't have those alley-oop sports that would progress into alley-oops in the sand, which is extremely difficult to execute. Anybody else have any other styles?
Then you have teams like the Asian teams like Vietnam or Chinese Taipei that just do not have the height advantage for the most part. So they get really creative, being very fast, going and attacking gaps in between defenders, very quick 360s as well. So that timing aspect of how fast is your 360 is sometimes even enough to throw a defender off. And I think Cedar can probably testament to that as a defender herself quite well.
There's huge differences between players, and if you are matching up against somebody who has a nice high, say slower spin, you get timed onto that, say like a batter would a pitcher, and then you jump with that timing, and then oh dang, it's a new player who spins all the way around and you haven't even jumped yet. So there's a timing aspect for sure. Yeah, as far as our style, I feel like we could really foster a style that capitalizes on our unique sports background. For example, in the specialist slot, Courtney Healy has a cannon of an arm, and we will absolutely use that. She loves to barrel down the sideline and put it in as much as she can. And we have height advantage to put into our favor. We might even do funky things like 2 out and 2 in, which that doesn't happen much, but why not when we have 2 big people that we can do it with. Just as much as we can mix it up, the better, I think.
Perfect. Yeah, really interesting. And that is actually a perfect segue into the next question I wanted to ask you all, which really is around the program's success as a really early young program, but you were able to qualify both on the women's and the men's side for the 2020 Beach World Championships, which unfortunately did not happen due to COVID and the pandemic. But I've just been really impressed already by how much success I've been seeing from the beach side of things. So I would love to talk about that a bit and sort of how it's been feeling to have some recent success as a very early and young program.
Yeah, absolutely. It obviously feels great when you go into a tournament and are able to win it all. I remember from that specific tournament and qualifying, I think the whole team really did a great job paying attention to details. And it was the little details off the court, I think, that just accumulate, and we're really able to stay focused and stay on task. I remember one game in Trinidad where just a monsoon started, right? Like these big not basketball size drops, but very large raindrops. And it was flooding part of the court, and it compacted the sand. And when the girls hit the sand, it was like they were hitting concrete, is what it sounded like. And there was no complaint, no slowing down. They just continued on. And I saw that with everything throughout that tournament. And I think it's a lot of these small detailed things that make a difference. And even to the point of going to a dress rehearsal before our final game, right? We walked down this hill, and we're covered in mosquitoes, and we're just going through kind of transition, and if this, then that, if this, then that, and visualization, and just taking care of everything, I think really elevated us and made us really focus.
Yeah, to kind of bounce off of that, I feel like handball tournaments and travel, being able to roll with the punches in the best way is really going to be to your benefit. So like the Trinidad, the Norca tournament, the huge rain, like being able to kind of see the humor in that. I remember like trying to run down the court, and the rain was so thick, it was like couldn't take a breath. Like I felt like I was inhaling raindrops, and hitting the ground to like knock the wind out of you. But it's like, well, we're just gonna keep playing through this. This is fine. But then that same trip, the buses that would shuttle us back and forth between the hotel and the courts would regularly be an hour late, but just being able to go with it and stay calm was good, and being able to keep your head about you. And also the rooming situation, there was, I guess, not enough viable rooms. And so we gave up some of our space to another team, and we all packed into just a couple of rooms. It was nice and squishy in there, but being able to sleep comfortably and making it work. And yeah, all the aspects, just being able to roll with it and still stay on your game was a factor at that tournament, at least, and we're good at that.
I would also say that kind of element of we are a sport that's impacted by the environment that you're playing in. So different sands give an impact. The weather makes an impact, right? Is kind of fun also to prepare for and to train for. So in preparation to Trinidad or even to Kazan, because you always have to prepare for rain, we actually had water buckets on the beach, wetted the balls before we did a drill with balls. So players got used to wet and slippery balls, right? And for a coach, that's such an interesting aspect to just increase the level of difficulty by introducing these stress factors that are still super related to the game itself. And I think that was or that continues to be the most impressive growing factor I see with all our athletes, that they become more adaptable against those kind of little changes that can really throw you off of your game. But they stay focused, they learn how to deal with these situations, they learn how to build these kind of situations in their own training, so that you don't just, I think in indoor you can just always practice in the gym floor won't be that different, But in beach, right, going to different beaches, playing on different beaches, to learn how does it affect your ability to spin, to pass, to even run in the sand, right? And yeah, taking just account of what can I control and what uncontrollable things do I have to train for. And that from a coaching perspective is always exciting to also have to take into account.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you all know what my next question is going to be. Mishi, that was perfect in terms of uncontrollable factors in your environment. I wanted to ask about this pandemic and what that experience has been like in terms of facing a lot of challenges as a team. Training and getting together is obviously a lot more limited now due to the situation that we're in. So what has the team been doing to stay in touch and just continue staying prepared? What has this pandemic looked like for the women's beach program?
I really want to applaud Lisa and Mishi for keeping the team connected during this time. It would be pretty easy for a coaching staff to be like, well, we're not competing or doing anything together this year, so take a big long break and we'll see you later. But it's really been the opposite of that. Towards the beginning of everything closing down, we were doing weekly Zoom calls and really capitalizing on utilizing the time off the court to be able to do things like mindset training. We watched this What Drives Winning docu-series, and with each episode we had associated homework and really had meaningful conversation amongst the team about those directed questions that Lisa and Mishi pointed at us. And that was really helpful in the space of like being a better teammate, just mindset training in general and leadership qualities, things like that. And also watched a lot of film. Mishi actually built this kind of system where we could learn the rules of beach handball. She basically built an app and associated questions and how to study the rules that are associated with those questions. That's a huge amount of work that they both poured into just developing us as players during this time apart and off the court. So thank you both.
I appreciate that, Cedar. Yeah. And to applaud Mishi, I mean, we're so fortunate to have somebody so tech savvy on staff. And I know I lean a lot on her to create these Handball IQ segments. And so we would get together on a weekly basis. And this was really from March till Thanksgiving. We met up every week for 90 minutes, half of which was mindset and, all to get to a point where the team selects core values and then the other half was Handball IQ. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, Mishi and I sat together and said, okay, what are the problems we can solve now? And a big piece is just creating a strong foundation of knowledge so that when the opportunity does come again, when we get to compete, the girls can just rely on their athletic abilities and don't have to worry about, oh, what rule is this again? And so just trying to instill a lot of confidence during this time period, because like Cedar said, it can be easy to say, all right, cool, let's just not do anything and relax. But, in the American model, just everybody's so spread out. And so we really wanted to stay connected and we wanted to create, again, this foundation of not only unity, but of just knowledge. And I think it really helped us get through this past year and ongoing.
Yeah, and as Cedar and Lisa already mentioned, right, we had time to also spend on these topics. So we actually identified one of the gaps is like not being rule savvy enough to really capitalize on that during a game. We had a lot of turnovers because substitution was not done in the rule conformant way. And those are super easy to control, and it doesn't take you being out on the beach. It doesn't take you being around with people to advance in that knowledge, right? So really making also the assessment, what can the players learn right now that still helps us in the goal of being better at our next tournament. And yeah, I had so much time at hand that I built the I think internationally first beach handball quiz app. It's all linked on the USA Beach Handball Tour, open to anyone. You can take a quiz there. And really going with the players through every rule. And I'm also one of the referees for USA Beach Handball. I actually accompanied the team in 2019, not in the coaching function, but as a referee. So me watching the final was like me holding to a pole because I had to be impartial and couldn't celebrate either team. And so I was like holding the pole, like, okay, you keep your emotions down. And then after the game was over and like the tournament was over, then obviously I went to the team, celebrated with them. But yeah, it's really, I think it gave us the chance to focus on the things that usually come short when you're out on the beach in active sessions and practice, and also open the players' eyes to what else is there to me just training on a daily basis or investing into my body physique, right? The mental aspect is so important. We talked about resilience to environmental factors. That all boils down to how mentally fit you are to be prepared to handle those situations.
On that note, we also have quarterly physical testing, and it's interesting because Cedar reached out and she's like, hey coach, so the ground's frozen here, is there any way? And so we just make these adjustments, but yeah, it's just interesting how she is willing to power through it. And she's like, hey, I can get this to you, it's supposed to thaw tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, let's figure this out.
Thank you for not making me run sprints in the snow, Lisa. Much
Well, I'm definitely very impressed by everything that I heard in terms of all of the things that you've done to maximize this downtime and this lack of competition. And I feel like it's just going to be really apparent once you all get back together on the sand, how much it's really strengthened your game. So personally, I'm very much looking forward to seeing the team back in action and out on the sand. And yeah, Mishi, it's incredible that you created an app with all of these different rules. So kudos to you for that. I did want to go through and just sort of touch a bit on each of your individual roles and experiences now. And I did want to also mention to everyone watching that if you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask any of our three guest speakers, feel free to post that in the comments and we will get to questions at the end. But Lisa, first, I wanted to just talk about, your experience as the head coach. I think it was a little more than a year ago, March of 2020, that you and Mishi were named the new head and assistant coach for the women's beach program. And it's been quite a challenging year in terms of taking on that role, but would just love to hear about how your experience has been so far.
Yeah, it's interesting because when initially we just came off of a training camp in San Antonio, and you kind of heard the rumors of like, okay, coronavirus is coming, what is this going to look like? And then it progressed within the next couple of days, and the announcement was made that Mishi and I were the new coaching staff, and we immediately got together on Zoom and kind of discussed what our game plan is. And throughout the last year and going into this year, the biggest challenge I think is fighting Zoom fatigue, really, and just this, essentially the athletes it was taken away from them, right? Like, I mean, they're not able to compete, they don't have scoreboard, they're not able to move as freely as they would like to. And so it created this different series of problems that we had to solve that I wasn't anticipating at all when going into it. So I think just being as creative as we could be, and again, identifying the problems that we had and how can we solve them and take advantage of it, was really important. But it's been so incredibly inspiring and fun to be working with Mishi, and just how responsive the team has been and how quickly they responded too positively, and we're on time on these calls. And I mean, every week for a good part of the year. And so it's just been really inspiring, and I'm just so incredibly proud to be a part of this team. And I cannot wait to get back on the sand, because I know that everybody's itching to get out there, and I'm just so excited to not go out there cold, because a lot of the times we don't see each other for months, and then you get together and then it takes a couple of games and like, oh yeah, now I'm in it, and I feel like we're reducing that time period. And I just can't wait. I can't wait to actually do what we signed up for and coach some games and coach some tournaments.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's very understandable that, you're itching to get back out there. So fingers crossed that it happens sooner rather than later. Mishi, I'd love to pass it to you now and talk about your experience as assistant coach.
Yes, so obviously I can echo a lot of the things Lisa said. She's been such an incredible partner also to work through the challenges. And I think what's unique in our pairing is really Lisa has the strong background in just how American sports are done, how you train physically, and I bring to the table this super analytical, very handball textbook knowledge to it that just helps us also look at the sport from so many different angles, because we both even though we share this German mindset to how work ethic I think we envision, but we bring in those different facets, and I think that was the most rewarding aspect of this new partnership. And I think for me, the time now with the team also really allowed me to dive deeper into some of the topics. Like I used animes to study other sports, to just get into what are the thinking patterns that people bring from their different sports. I watched other sports to really familiarize myself. Okay, what are Cedar's strengths with her background in sports? What are the strengths that she brings to the table that we can now actually utilize? And trying to myself learn this language, or learn the language of the other sports, because for me, I've mostly just played handball my entire life. So developing a common language that we can use to effectively communicate, and just use that also during our training camps, our games. And we had a recent camp for the first time. We did it regionally separated, so one East Coast, one West Coast camp, and just the joy everyone bringing to the table, coming back into the sand. And a lot of players actually mentioned we didn't feel that much apart because we had the calls, right? We were able to connect. And also for us, for Lisa and I, one of our goals is growing the sport. So we need to find a concept that works to attract athletes on both coasts. It can't just be one hub. I mean, that's one of the strategies, but we said, okay, let's use our regional disparate location and really build the sports on both coasts, trying to attract just more talent, growing the local scene on both sides, strengthening the pool we have to select players from.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. And I did want to actually ask about those training camps and how they went. Sounds like it was obviously a really exciting and kind of peak moment for everyone to finally be back together again, although on different coasts, but at least as groups again. So what did that look like, and how did those camps go? And that's for all three of you.
I gotta say, it was really nice to be back on the sand again. That was the best feeling. And yeah, we just ran, like Mishi said, 2 different camps, one in Southern California, one in Atlanta, and just kind of split up the players pool. The locals in California were there, and then the Atlanta girls and myself were down in Atlanta. And it didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, it didn't seem like we had to knock as much rust off as you would expect after being away for a year. So it was great quality reps, focused, and yeah, I felt like it was a really productive training camp.
Yeah,
I think,
go ahead, Nishi.
okay, I think for me, the interesting part, having run previous training camps to some extent, right, the whole logistics around keeping everyone safe, right, keeping the athletes safe in this new time, right. So we had testing protocols that we adhered to before the camp, always getting feedback from the players. We started also tracking just exertion levels throughout the camp to really see, okay, how much are we pushing these athletes that basically couldn't do any sports for the most part of the year, and how can we ease back into training without risking their healthy bodies, right? So I think that was an interesting challenge in addition to the training camp that I think we get better as we go. But the most important thing was everyone's healthy prior to the camp and also post the camp. So I think that was the main goal, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think that we were able to complete it successfully. And with that, it would, no matter how the individual camps went, as of now, there's really no bulletproof methodology to how to get together in a larger group safely. And so really, Misha and I spend a lot of time with, talking to our outstanding resources and just trying to come up with a way to do it as safely as we could. And it was great that everybody was so willing to do that. And then once we all got together, it was really important for me that we just had fun, that yes, we'll have these structures, but I mean, it's been a year since we've seen each other in person and, since we got to play together. And so just enjoying that moment, because to me, it was a celebration of this past year and us staying connected. And, I think that it's okay to celebrate that, because the girls really did do a lot of work. I mean, again, it gets fatiguing to be on Zoom for this long, especially as an athlete. You join a team to play. And so I was just really excited and really happy to see everybody get to play and get to be happy in the sand.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just going back really quickly, Cedar, I wanted to make sure we also talked about your role as the women's beach representative on the USA Team Handball Athletes Advisory Council, which is more of a new group that we're very excited to have fully formed now. So, what has your role within that group looked like, and what makes you optimistic for the coming months and hopefully years in the program as a whole?
Yeah, thank you. I'm very honored to be able to have this role and serve my team in this way and to give back to the team. So to my knowledge, there hasn't been a framework in place previously to really provide a direct line from the athletes and the concerns and the matters and the ideas that they want to voice, having that line directly to the board. So as part of the AAC, as the women's beach rep, that's really my job, is to provide that conduit. And there's been no shortage of good ideas in the past, but just really no means of having a unified effort in making things happen. Efforts in the past, for that reason, have been fragmented and unfortunately can fall flat. So with a really dynamic group of the AAC, having a rep for each of the players' pools, we can provide solutions or propose solutions to the board and really make an effort in making any changes and advances for the organization. So I'm really, really excited to have this in place and be a part of that.
Excellent. Thank you. Very well said. And it makes me very excited for the AAC as well. I wanted to ask about the future of the program now. Hopefully that we are coming to the end of the pandemic, fingers crossed, and looking towards bigger and better things in the future. So for all three of you, what are some of your hopes for the sport as a whole? And what are you most looking forward to just in general with beach handball?
We have a big year ahead of us, so I'm pretty excited for that. For us, especially, we're going to have a big tournament in the US, and I couldn't be more excited for that. We have the World Games in Birmingham, Alabama, and now that all the the events got pushed to either got canceled and are now 2022. So, we have the World Championships, we have our NERCA Championship, and we have the World Games. And so I think it will be a stacked year. I'm really excited for that. I think for the future of the sport, I'm excited to see more women representing the coaching staff, and hopefully having more women in positions of power to address some of the equipment disparity, I think that currently exists between men and women. I think it's going to be really important for us to change that, just to be more inclusive. I know that there's a lot of Muslim countries that are popping up and playing beach handball and looking really strong. And so I really hope that the IHF can identify that and can make the changes that need to happen in order to be inclusive to all.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, yeah, with 2022 being a packed year, that's so much to look forward to. We don't often, it seems, get to have the opportunity to play on such big stages in one season that often. And with the added benefit of being able to play at home in the States for the World Games in Birmingham, that's a great opportunity to draw as many eyes as possible to the sport and could have good implications of growing the sport domestically. So that, I think, is really exciting.
Yeah. I think for me, the most exciting thing is growing the sport and figuring out how can we do recruiting, also that it scales, that we attract also youth talents. We have beach handball is part of the Youth Olympics. So any youth team we field has actually a good chance of becoming part of these Youth Olympic Games. So it's immensely important to invest in also the youth. So we build a pipeline, right? We grow the sport from really a solid foundation. I'm excited for colleges now to try it out. I think USA Team Handball has also just built up their reach quite a bit. So positioning beach handball as just a way to practice when you do not have a gym, right? And making sure that the rules are somewhat familiar, and then it's easier for Lisa and I to include more athletes into the sport, right? And regardless whether it's a co-ed tournament or really just for a specific gender, right? In the end, what is important to us is that people get opportunities to play without having to necessarily pay thousands of dollars to fly somewhere to and compete in a tournament. So growing the sport in America, finding ways that people can compete even if they don't have a beach, right? I think that's really exciting, because I think we have a great opportunity with COVID not promoting or being more in favor of non-contact sports, which beach handball is considered a moderate to no contact sport. So yeah, just giving everyone the opportunity to get out there and play and potentially compete for the country they love.
Those were amazing answers from all three of you, and definitely looking forward to a lot of what you said in terms of making it a more inclusive sport for all, and just getting more people the opportunity to play beach handball and learn how fun and awesome the sport is. So thank you for that. I have one final question before we get into questions from the audience. So I was curious, what would be each of your advice for someone who is interested in getting started in the sport? They see it on social media, they see it on TV or YouTube, and they want to get started. What would your advice to them be?
I would say that it's definitely possible to do, even if you are living in a completely landlocked spot. Speaking from here in Denver, Colorado. So don't let that hold you back from giving it a try. And it's such a small community that we have. If you just reach out to either Lisa, Mishi, or myself, or any of the social media pages, we can point you in the right direction or coordinate with you and when the next training opportunity will be. So just reaching out to somebody and give it a try. You won't be sorry, and super fun.
I would also say just use your existing sports group. If you're into sports and have anyways a group that you maybe pick up basketball with every now and then, right? Use beach handball to switch it up. Just so you need a couple of people obviously to play a team sport. But then again, it's such a easy thing to just throw in, and if you like it as a group, then continue it and maybe specialize in it, right? But it's also good if you just tried it once and it's maybe becoming a monthly thing. We've provided quite a lot of education material, one-pager rule sheets that really break down. I think the rule book has 90 pages. Nobody wants to read the 90 pages. So we broke it down into a single pager, very simple rules. Be creative. The 360 motions, those very spectacular spins, right? If you're very athletic, go for it, right? If you're not, then come up with a different rule that allows you to score 2 points, right? Keeping the mechanics and the gameplay the same, but then the motion, something that's fun for you guys. So something like passing or scoring through the legs, a goal would be awarded 2 points, right? All these kind of things are close enough to the game that they help you get into the sport and make it fun. And that's the ultimate goal. Like, pick something that makes you happy and is a great opportunity to play with your friends.
Absolutely. I also think that we have such a great club community here in the US, and pretty much almost all major cities, maybe not all, but close to it, have a handball team. And now, especially this past summer, I see more and more of these clubs posting how they're playing beach handball. And so I also think it can be a good idea to reach out to them, and they'll at least know the rules and, have a lot of bodies to bring. I know New York City was out. I know Chicago has their beach tournament, and Boston goes out to Cape Cod. So there's a lot of fun events happening within the community, and that's a good starting point. And I think that the resources are there, or as Cedar said, just reach out and we'd be happy to either point you in the right direction or invite you out and see what you got.
This is super valuable advice. So thank each of you for giving such great direction for people looking to get started. And I encourage those who watch this to reach out to any of you three. All phenomenal resources and extremely great to work with. So absolutely. Our first question from the audience is from Martin Bolello, who wanted to know, how do you envision the next generations of beach handballers getting in contact with the sport and growing with it?
That's a really great question. Hopefully if all of us are pulling on the same string, we'll be able to piggyback off of the existing handball clubs in the collegiate circuit. So Penn State, UNC, West Point. And hopefully from there, it will progress into more colleges. I know Ohio State has a handball team now, so hopefully, not sure how their summers are, but but I'm sure they'd be excited to play. And then, I think we do have to start younger than college to make it a really competitive team.
Yeah, and I think great with Martin being the leader for the youth programs here in the Bay Area, right? I think opportunities like this where clubs have invested already in youth clubs and youth sports, right? Positioning beach handball as just another activities that those schools could do with the handball clubs together, or also the clubs reaching out to us, telling us about talent, so we can invite them into our training camps as soon as it's safe enough again to invite others into larger training groups, right? But really leveraging that communication chain that the clubs are connected to USA Team Handball and therefore also connected to USA Beach Handball, and showing us the talent so that and putting the talent out there in social media as well, right? Stream your games, like make sure that you make these players visible in a country as large as the United States, right?
Yeah, just echoing their sentiments, plain and simple, is growing the club scene. So I think a good target population of athletes would be those just transitioning out of their collegiate sports career, maybe in a more premier sport such as volleyball or basketball, not wanting to quite let that go yet and considering a fifth year or maybe something else, and then just get it while it's hot.
Yes, great point. And it is that great transition sport. I'm always amazed to hear about how many different sports our beach handball athletes played before getting onto the sand. And just really cool to see how they've adapted to the style of play that they're now in. Peter Hanlon, who runs the West Point women's team, asked, is there a weekend in the fall that you could host the West Point women's team to practice? Lisa and Mishi, I'll let you collaborate with Peter on that for the fall.
Absolutely, we'll get in contact.
No, I think it's always been great. So we've run training camps with the West Point athletes before, so we have a great relationship with them and always happy to host more camps with them, because in the end they're great athletes. They also want to represent their country. They do already off the beach handball court, right? So why not use that synergy and have them also represent us on the beach handball court, for sure.
Yeah, it was actually right before the pandemic. I remember getting in contact with West Point and kind of talking about potential dates, and then of course everything shut down. So I'm happy to see that he's here watching and still interested. So absolutely, I'm very excited to host you guys.
Excellent. That sounds great. Dennis Burkholz, who has long been very strongly involved in the USA Team Handball and USA Beach Handball programs, was curious about future competitions. So Lisa, I know you covered a lot about how we have a lot of upcoming competitions and events going on, but maybe what is the next one that people can mark on their calendars and look out for?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It's up in the air, right? Right now, it's so hard to lock things in, but Mishi and I are really trying to figure out how best can we have a high level domestic competition. And I talked to a sports event company down in Florida, and we're in discussion of, having something there. Mishi and I talked about having something on the West Coast. And so there's no definites as of now. And I think, unfortunately, we might have to wait until a little bit closer to June once the vaccine gets completely rolled out. And I'm hoping that will be a pivotal point in events and in sports, that we're able to really have teams commit to come to us. And I do think that the next event will be a domestic one, is my hope, because that's where our energy is going into now. So hopefully later on in the summer. But unfortunately, I'm not able to give a really solid and committed yes, August 21st, but we are definitely working on it. I know a lot of the girls are looking for competitions in Europe as on a club level to go and compete. And I'm really excited for that to happen. Both Mishi and I are absolute cheerleaders of them getting experience internationally. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
To bounce off of what Lisa just said, I just want to give Christine Mansour a plug real quick. She has been shaking and moving and put together a team that's essentially half Netherlands, half American. So a few of our players are going to go over June, July and hit up that European circuit and get some good competition in. So we're really excited as to what we can learn from that and just getting to compete. So yeah, thank you for putting that together and thanks for the support.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really impressed by Christine and what she's been able to put together there. So can't wait to see what that team accomplishes, and very much looking forward to seeing the action over in Europe. Seeing as we are coming to the top of the hour, I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So how about we do just sort of a final round of thoughts, anything you didn't get a chance to say or highlight. I'll give everyone an opportunity to do some final words and a sign off. So no pressure. Whenever anyone's ready and feels like they can go, feel free to take the floor.
I want to give you a big thank you, Melissa, for just continuing to promote our sport over the last year, even though there hasn't been a whole lot going on in the way of competition, but you've been out there online making it happen and keeping it relevant. So thank you for really making that happen.
Yeah, and then I think again for everyone listening, consider beach handball as just a fun thing to get back into sports now that we didn't have a lot of sports around, right? If you have a group of friends that you usually do sports with, maybe that's an alternative for you to get back in and just meet up with each other again. And yeah, I'm excited for more people to reach out and for the sport, this team to grow. And the ultimate goal is that we are, as a sport, attractive enough to become an Olympic sport. And with that being possible, again, US hosting in 2028, that would be the most exciting thing for any American here, right? You get to compete at the Olympics and then basically in your home country. So that's the exciting future ahead of us, and we need all the help we can get to make that happen.
Absolutely. And if you're in any of the areas where training camps are happening, Melissa, I know you were able to come out to Hermosa Beach, but or Redondo Beach, but definitely reach out to us, come by, bring your kids, just watch the sport, watch the girls train. I'm just really, really excited for what the future holds for this group of women specifically. I am so overwhelmed by all the support we've been getting from USA Team Handball, the excitement that we've been getting once they see the girls actually compete and play. I have full faith that we're able to accomplish greatness, and I'm really excited for our next year of competition.
Incredibly well put by all of you. So thank you so much again for your time. And again, like you said, Lisa, the future is just so bright, and I'm very excited to see what this team does and what the sport does as a whole. So thank you again for all that you do for our sport and for being such great ambassadors for beach handball. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all today. So thank you again for your time. And to everyone tuning in, you can find out more about the women's beach team by heading to our website and visiting their specific page on usateamhandball.org. So Lisa and Mishi's contact information is there as well if you want to get in touch with them and learn more about the team. So with that, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you three for your time. And I hope everyone stays well and stays healthy out there. And yeah, have a great night.
Thank you, Melissa.